Hi, and welcome back to week 3 of Book Wizards. We are reading The Mummy with No Name, a Geronimo Stilton mystery. When we left off, Geronimo had 2 mysteries to figure out. 1, what is going on with this mummy that is running around the Mouseum? And 2, what is the second part of the papyrus giving the secrets to the mummy? So he has 2 things to figure out. Let's see if he can do it this week in part 3 of The Mummy with No Name. Before anyone could respond, we heard a loud creak. I nearly jumped right out of my fur. What was that? I gasped. My heart was beating so hard, I felt like I had just finished the New Mouse City Marathon. Of course, the closest I had ever gotten to the marathon was the time I watched it on TV while eating a giant double-decker cheddar sandwich. Yum. For a minute, I almost forgot about the mummy, but then we heard another creak, and then another, and another. Suddenly, all the lights went out. "Stop! Who's there? Who turned off the lights?" Professor Sandsnout yelled. The same disgusting, musty odor I had smelled earlier filled the air. Then we heard someone, or something, moaning. "Ooh, go away, or you'll be sorry." A swishing sound followed. It sounded as if someone with bandaged feet was coming towards us. They shuffled closer and closer. Was it the mummy or some other creepy Egyptian monster? Rat-munching rattlesnakes, how much more could one mouse take? Just when I was certain I would die of fright, we heard a muffled little laugh. It cackled. The laugh grew weaker and weaker and weaker until it was gone. Who was laughing at us? Professor Sandsnout scrambled around in the dark and came back with a flashlight. The beam of light threw eerie shadows around the room. Then he headed towards the circuit breaker and turned on the lights. I looked around. Everything looked the same as before, except for one thing. The papyrus was gone! The professor's fur turned as white as a slice of mozzarella. He reached for the floor, his desk, the inside of his garbage pail, but the papyrus was nowhere to be found. Someone had stolen it. But who? Who? The professor looked glum. "Oh, why did I let that papyrus out of my paws? Now we've got to find both parts," he groaned. We started down the long, long hallway. I lagged behind. All of the dust was turning me into a sneezing machine. Achoo! I squeaked again and again. Finally, I stopped, and that's when I saw it. A mysterious shadow was growing on the wall. It grew bigger and bigger. Who was following me? The shadow stretched towards me like a claw. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. Instead, I heard another sound, the sound of someone singing in an old, raspy voice. "Mummies creeping here and there. Mummies, mummies everywhere. They stink of mold and rotten things. They'll make you wish you had some wings. Mummies hiding, watching, waiting, making you sweat, anticipating. Mummies." The shadow was creeping closer and closer. "Please don't hurt me! I come in peace!" I yelped. I held my breath as I turned the corner. But there was no mummy there at all. The shadow belonged to an old lady mouse with thick glasses. She was washing the museum floor with a bucket of soapy water and a mop. When she smiled, I could see she was wearing dentures. I turned purple with embarrassment. So this was who had scared me out of my wits? This frail little old lady mouse who looked like she wouldn't swat a fly? I gave her a sheepish smile, then I ran off. Soon I caught up with Benjamin, Bugsy, and the professor. Professor Sandsnout gave me a sheet of paper. "This is the floor plan of the museum, Geronimo," he explained. "You will need it to help me search for the missing papyrus." After a little while, we reached what was known as the Hall of Scarabs. We tried to go inside, but the door was locked. Professor Sandsnout turned back to get the keys from his office. Benjamin and Bugsy played word games while they waited. I would have joined in, but I was too busy sneezing. Achoo! 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 "God bless you!" a little voice called out. It seemed to be coming from a dark corner at the end of the hall. "Thank you," I answered automatically. Then I froze. Yikes! Was it the mummy? A minute later, the same voice began to moan. "Ooh, go away, or you'll be sorry." I was about to run away with my tail between my legs, but Bugsy and Benjamin were running towards the dark corner. How daring! How brave! How nuts! Bugsy waved her camera in the air. "Hey, Mummy, do you like having your picture taken?" she yelled. Just then, the mummy raised a billowing cloud of dust. Now everybody was sneezing. Achoo! 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 Whew! The mummy took advantage of our sneezing fits and ran off down the hall. At that moment, Professor Sandsnout came back with the keys. We quickly told him what had happened. "The mummy appeared again? Incredible!" he squeaked, unlocking the door. We entered the Hall of Scarabs. The beautiful collection of gold, silver, copper, jade, alabaster, ruby, emerald, and topaz Egyptian beetles were on exhibit. The professor explained that the scarab was a sacred symbol to the ancient Egyptians. It was the symbol of immortality. A shiver ran up my spine. Bugs made my fur crawl. Don't be afraid," I told Benjamin and Bugsy, grabbing their paws. "I'm not afraid," Benjamin replied. "Don't you just love bugs, Uncle G?" Bugsy said, grinning. While the others were admiring the beetles, I stepped into the next room to get as far away from the bugs as I could. The room was called the Hall of Sarcophagi. In it, a long row of sarcophagi leaned against one wall. The coffins were made of marble, granite, and painted wood. There were even some made of gold. Many of the sarcophagi had faces painted on them. I guessed that these were the faces of the dead mice inside. Cheese niblets! Being around all those dead mice was beginning to make me feel queasy. Then I spotted one sarcophagus that was empty. I bent down to read its plaque when someone behind me pushed me inside. The lid closed on top of me with a sickening thud. I was trapped. "Help!" I screamed at the top of my lungs. "Moldy mozzarella!" I was terrified beyond belief. Oh, how did I get myself into this mess? Tears rolled down my fur. Luckily, my friends had heard my shouts. The lid opened, and they quickly pulled me out of the coffin. "Were you crying, Uncle G?" Bugsy asked. No, I just got some dust in my eye," I lied. After all, I didn't want anyone thinking I was a fraidy mouse. And that is part 3 of The Mummy with No Name. The story's getting pretty spooky. This mummy just keeps showing up and causing all sorts of trouble. We'll have to wait until next week for part 4 to see what happens next in the story. But if you're interested in sarcophagi and scarab beetles and mummies, be sure to check out our Geography Club video for this month. It was all on ancient Egypt and modern Egypt. And it's really fun, so be sure to check that out. Now for your activity for the week. When we ended, Geronimo Stilton had gotten stuck in the sarcophagi. The mummy pushed him in. Thankfully, Benjamin and Bugsy got him out. But for your activity, I want you to come up with a different ending. What could Geronimo have done to get out if Benjamin and Bugsy hadn't come along? I want you to think up a new ending for this part of the story. Maybe write it down and read it to your friends and family. But be sure to have lots of fun with it. I will see you next week for part 4 of The Mummy with No Name. Bye.